be kind to yourself. You talk to yourself more than anybody else talks to you. So make sure the voice in your head is encouraging you and lifting you up and taking you in the right direction, not tearing you down, kicking your butt, and making you hate yourself. Today, I want to talk about being kind to yourself. I think that we forget how important it is to treat ourselves well. The craziest thing about being a human is that we're often more we're often meaner to ourselves than we are to other people. And one of the reasons for this is because historically it was necessary for our brains to be hyper aware of inconsistencies in our environment or danger or anything that could put our potential survival at risk. So our brains are designed to protect us. And in our modern society, there's not really as much to protect us from. One of the reasons that we have such a high instance of anxiety in our modern world is because even though technologically and intellectually humans have evolved quite considerably in the last, 100 years, for thousands of years before that, they were kind of running on a whole different operating system. And so everything is kind of still carried over. The actual evolution of the human is, a long-term process. And I'm not talking about scientific evolution from like apes. I'm talking about just the actual evolution that we can track right now in today's modern society. So don't run away if you don't believe in evolution. Don't run away if you do, because this isn't about creation versus evolution. We're just talking about the adaptation of humans and the way that technically, it takes a very long time for evolution to occur. And it takes a long time. While we can change our minds and we can learn logical thought processes and we can become intellectually more advanced, that base instinct takes a lot longer to change, especially after practicing it for 1,000 years. You don't do a habit for 40 years and then kick it in 3 days. It just doesn't work like that. That's how life works in general. Everything is kind of like that. And so we see an issue within our life, within ourselves, within our environment, and our brain automatically tries to find a way how this can be dangerous, and do we need to change this in order to be safe? How can we fight against this to be safe? And in our modern society, a lot of times there isn't really anything to fight against, so we end up with a lot of anxiety because there's nowhere to put this energy, and not everybody has it, but a lot of people do. Instinctively, we're a long way behind our current technological and intellectual evolution. So we have anxiety because of that, and we tend to be very hard on ourselves because our brains are wired for this kind of survival instinct, to be the best that we can be, to have the strongest survival, because we're supposed to, as animals, we're supposed to thrive and procreate, and our entire purpose for existing as an animal is to continue the human race. So because our brains have evolved to detect threats, and we don't really encounter a lot of threats in modern society, that instinct has been turned inwards, and now we are our own biggest threat according to our brain. Now, most people don't even realize that they're talking poorly to themselves. They don't even realize what that means, because for most people, it's a programmed voice that comes from like childhood, caregivers, peers, just culture in general, religion, and it's people saying things all the time, telling you how the parts of you aren't good enough. If you tend to be a fidgety person like me, and you spend your entire life being told to sit still, be calm, don't do that, that's annoying. Then when, as you get older, it creates this programming within your brain where you're not allowed to wiggle or fidget or move because you need to sit still, be calm, you're too much. And you embrace that as a truth because uh, you were taught that that's the truth, that there's something wrong with you. And so then you use that, you're against yourself your entire life. Oftentimes, subconsciously, we don't even realize why we feel the way we feel about the things we've done. Another part of that is that we often witnessed our own parents and other people in our lives, including on television, where one of the things I've noticed is our society is very influenced by television and media, and that you see that kind of behavior repeated because it's relatable. But if you're in an impressionable point of your life, that relatability for the average healthy person might become a story that isn't true about yourself that you're now telling yourself because you feel like you need to be this certain way or look this certain way or do this certain thing. And so we tend to be really hard on ourselves and really critical of our failures and our quirks and our eccentricities. And the sad thing about it is that being hard on yourself doesn't actually work. It can, to a degree. You can discipline yourself to, for instance, catch yourself. Like when I wanted to become a more positive person, I used to be such a negative Nelly, and I was just so concerned with everything that was wrong in the world. And when I wanted to change that, when I realized that that was ruining my life, I made a conscious effort every single day to stop myself whenever I would have one of these negative thoughts or feelings, and I would catch myself and I would intentionally reframe the thought. So, like if I can't even think of any examples now. The problem with getting to a point where these exercises become second nature is that it sometimes gets really hard to explain how to get here, which is why I'm doing this video, because I make all these shorts, but they're very short and they're not really informative and they don't really teach anybody anything. And if they don't already know how to do it, they're not going to be able to do it just because I said do it. Sometimes things are easier said than done. So, being hard on yourself does not help. Abusing yourself doesn't get you any further in the process. And if anything, it causes stress, which completely it's physically and emotionally unhealthy, but it also reduces your confidence and it kills your motivation to continue because you're so busy saying, oh man, I thought I had a negative thought. I'm a bad person. That was horrible of me. Instead of saying, oh, dang, I had a negative thought. I guess I am still human. Welp, I better find a positive thought to replace it, because that's how you do it. You don't go through the process of being like, well, I want to be kinder to myself. So then you're doing something and you're like, you make a mistake and you think, oh, stupid idiot. Stop. And ask yourself, would I say that to my friend if they did that same thing? Because chances are pretty good you would not say to your friends the kind of things you say to yourself in your head. Instead of saying, I'm a freaking idiot, you can be like, oh, look, I'm a human. Yay, I'm still learning. I can fix this. This isn't who I am. This doesn't define my worth. The mistakes that you make are not indicative of your value as a person. They're not indicative of how worthy you are to have good things or to live a good life or to be happy or to feel loved. We have to be kind to ourselves because the way we treat ourselves is the way we allow other people to treat us. Your inner voice should be a coach, not a bully. A coach points out your mistakes and even tells you how to correct them. But a coach isn't going to tear you down. So, talk to yourself. Are you your own coach, or are you bullying yourself? When you're making mistakes, or when you're not perfect at the thing that you want to be good at, what is your first response? If your first response isn't, I can do better, that was a learning experience, this is, I'm still learning, this is a hard thing that I haven't figured out yet. Full, if it isn't full of grace and compassion for your own self, the same grace and compassion that you would give to your best friend in an identical circumstance, then it's probably a good idea to retrain that inner voice. Be kind to yourself, because you got to live with yourself forever.